So first of all, Brian, thanks for taking the time to speak to me.
It's a pleasure.
You joined Aston Villa as a 15-year-old. What was that like for you, especially in the early days?
Well, when I look back now, it was obviously quite daunting. I mean, I have 4 boys, older than 15, and I would have hated any of them to have left home at 15, in all fairness. But I guess for me, it helped me grow up very quickly, and it was a little bit more the norm going back 50 years. That when you went to work, you often left home and things like that. And I got an apprenticeship, which was a brilliant opportunity for me. So I went for it, But was I frightened? Yeah, I guess I was, to be honest. It was definitely daunting. It was definitely a massive step, but as time has proven, it obviously was the best thing I've ever done in my life, in all fairness.
Yeah, and as a player that young, what was the support like from everyone at Villa and the people around you?
Well, again, I was very lucky. In those days you went into lodgings and you didn't stay in hotels or there wasn't any planned. So we were all put with families. I got a great family who were brilliant to me and, became like a real second mum and dad to me. And they lived in Sutton Coldfield, Mr. and Mrs. Mallard, and they were really fantastic. So again, I was lucky. I got a good family who got to know me well, who looked after me well, and were quite disciplined with me, which I think you needed in those days. So as I've said, it was strange, but I got really well looked after.
Yeah, and your first real taste of silverware was the FA Youth Cup.
Yeah. How
did it feel to win that at such a young age, and did that make you hungry for more?
Yeah, we had a great group of players. I mean, when I was 15, we came here, and I came here with another bunch of lads who were 15. So basically, when we won the Youth Cup, we were like a team of 18-year-olds. We were all young men by then. And quite often in the Youth Cup, a lot of teams would have 15-year-olds and 16-year-olds. So one of the strengths we had was that we had some very grown-up 18-year-olds in our team. But I'd had 3 years' experience. And if you look at that team, people like John Gidman, my brother Alan played first team football here. Tony Betts played in the first team. Dougie George played a few games in the first team. Bobby MacDonald played a few games. So there was a real strength about that group of players who all eventually played in Aston Villa's first team. So we had a great bunch of players. And winning the FA Youth Cup against Liverpool when we were a 3rd division football team was just a great feeling. And I was blessed with it, to be honest. So it was a great occasion for us, and probably winning my first trophy was something that gave people like myself the desire to go on and do well in the game.
Yeah, and you soon became a regular starter in the 2nd division the following season, and playing under the likes of Vic Crowe and Ron Saunders, if my research is correct.
Yes.
What were they like as managers?
Completely different. Vic was very laid back. He gave me my first real opportunities in the side, and that was good. But when Ron Saunders came, Ron was a completely different character, very disciplined, very organised, didn't really give a lot away to the players, but his discipline, I suppose, was good for me. I had quite a few run-ins with him, in all fairness, but it was only because I was standing my own ground, and I had a good mix of a real strong man telling me what to do, but I also had the strength sometimes to stand up to him, which I think was good for me as well as a young man growing up. But Ron, I look back on my career now and I realise how much of an influence Ron Saunders was on me. He was really good for me. He kept me on the straight and narrow, and I suppose as a young boy I was a little bit, I wouldn't say wayward, but I was quite difficult to handle. I was pretty temperamental. But he just kept me in place, and without him I probably wouldn't have done anything like I've done today in football, so I owe him a great deal.
So we're going to talk about your time in management shortly, but what did you learn a lot from then when going into management?
Yeah, Ron was definitely my biggest influence. Ron Saunders was a massive influence on me, but a fella called Bruce Rioch, who I also played with at Aston Villa, I worked for 3 years with Bruce at Middlesbrough when he was the manager there, and I think my management style was based a lot around Ron Saunders' teams, but the work ethic and the closeness Bruce Rioch afforded himself to get to players. He taught me you can get close to players, still get respect, and still treat them in a way that they wanted to be treated. So Ron gave me a lot of football ideas and how to run a team. Bruce gave me a lot of influence, or had a lot of influence on me on how I should approach players, speak to players, deal with players, buy players, watch players, sell players. So it was a good mix, really. I had a good bit of discipline off Ron Saunders, but genuinely a lot of Bruce Ray probably just fine-touched me, fine-coned me to how to deal with football management. So between the two of them, they had a massive influence on me.
Yeah, and if we move to 1975 now, which was a great year for the club, just talk us through your emotions and your memories of that season.
Well, 75 was a great season because from Christmas till the end of the season we only lost one game of football in the league, and that was at Leyton Orient. So I remember the momentum, I remember the belief in the fans, I remember the fans coming out. We had 40, 50,000 people in Villa Park watching us play on a regular basis. So it was a great period to play football, and I remember the momentum more than anything else. I remember the belief in everybody. An Aston Villa team that felt every time it went out there it was going to win football matches. So I think that's really the big standing point with me, and learning to deal with playing in front of a massive crowd as well. It was a great period, one that I'll never forget.
Yeah, and you scored over 60 goals for Villa. Is there one that means the most to you?
It's difficult to say one that means the most. I mean, I scored goals that won us a cup final. I scored a hat-trick that took us in a semi-final that took us to a final, and I scored 20 odd goals the year we got promoted back to the Division 1 as it was in those days. So no, it's more of an amalgamation of goals, but I think an eclipse would be to have scored the hat-trick in a semi-final at Highbury against Queen's Park Rangers. To score a hat-trick in a semi-final was a great feeling. So those 3 goals at Highbury really stick in my mind an awful lot.
Yeah, and you've practically done everything at Villa, including being a manager, where you won the League Cup. Did you always want to come back to Villa as a manager after your career?
I think at first I was just happy to become a football manager. I didn't really know what to do. I had to retire when I was early, and I didn't really have a game plan. You know, at 27, not to know what you're going to do was quite strange. So I went into coaching. I think once I got into coaching and once I got into management, once I started doing well in that, I guess, you know, I wanted to go to the top, and coming here took me to the top, which was great. So, but I didn't have a plan when I stopped playing, because I was not expecting to be stopped playing in anything. But yeah, to come here was great, and after winning after taking Leicester to the Premier League, to come here was obviously the best thing that could ever happen to me.
Yeah, and finally, as this year's promotion sunk in yet, and what do you foresee next season?
Well, I sense the same sort of momentum as I talked about in 1975, when the club really pulled itself round, and we've had 3 years out of the Premier League. I think those 3 years have given the club a grounding. It's given the people who've come in an opportunity to look at what's gone on the last few years, and hopefully to learn from that, and hopefully build the same sort of momentum that Villa had back in the 70s when they went from the 3rd division right to winning the top flight of football. So I'm hoping that is what's going to happen. I genuinely feel the club is in the right hands now. We've had a lot of people try to put it right, but the current regime have done fantastically well, and I'm hoping, like everybody else, that this is the start of something great to come again.
Yeah, well, thank you for your time, and up to Villa.
All right, it's a pleasure. Thank you. God bless.
If you enjoyed that video, why not watch another? Click here to watch them in full. Also, subscribe if you're new, so you can follow my journey to the media world.